Welcome to the session on GSI. What is GSI? I want to introduce Zach Wynn, GIS technician, and Sally Vaughn, GIS manager with Person County. And you want to say anything else? Go ahead.
No. So what is GSI? And we actually had another acronym for the what part, but it was a little too crass for today, but it's something we've heard more than once in our small rural county, not only from citizens, but fellow departments, maybe even some department heads. And so what we wanted to talk about today was how we take all this stuff that we talked about and other things and where they fit in to how we interact with the community. And I understand we're right after lunch. If you need to take a little snooze, that's fine. I understand. I do it every day. Just kidding. No, I don't.
Not when I'm looking at it.
No. So, like I said, I'm Zach Wynn. I've been working with Person County for about 1.5 years. I did a career switch into GIS after 10 years with emergency management. I realized I like staying home during snowstorms instead of going to work, so I decided to go back to school and come to this. And this is my boss, Sally Vaughn.
Hi, I'm Sally. I've been with Person County about 3.5, maybe 4 years. Before that, worked for a police department, and before that, worked in private consulting. So it's kind of been all over the place. Still getting used to this local government gig. I've got about 15 years in GIS and a master's from ECU. Go Pirates! Just putting that out there. And so we can just start. Like, why the title? So I was in some emergency management training the other day, and a guy that's been with the county for 28 years. In EMS. He's a guy that I've worked with. He and I have sat down and we have drawn on paper maps the EMS boundaries where, these guys respond versus these guys. We've talked about road naming. We've had addressing conversations. So we're in this training together the other day, and we go through a scenario of what happens if this chemical plant catches on fire. And he says, call GSI. Clearly, I have failed as a GIS manager if the guys in EMS, who, by the way, are routed with my data, don't even know what GIS stands for or can't even recognize it as a department of the county. And we find that to be true across county departments, across city departments, and certainly within the population that we serve. And so we kind of just thought that'd be a fun introduction into what we do and how we engage our community. And we've kind of taken a little bit of a different approach than I think most GIS departments have.
So when I first started in the summer of 17, she had just completed, or some contractors had just completed an audit of our addressing. And we realized that out of the 20,000+ addresses that we had, 20% were incorrect. And that boiled down to not only a separate audit of visibility, but people were using numbers that had never been given to them, or were using made up numbers, or the numbers from when they were Route 1 by whatever. And that was in the early 90s. And so we thought we need to reach out to the community because this is having some legitimate real world impacts. Right off the bat, we heard anecdotes about ambulances going past a house and backing up. Is that it? No, I don't know. Is it across the road? What could we do? And then that also helped us realize that there's other tools and there's other departments outside of the basic addressing and GIS functions, if you will, that where we could help them enhance their tools, enhance their projects. So like I said, we had about 20,000 and in that, or over 20,000 with 20% that were incorrect. And over that time, we've brought that down. And we realized, like I said, the best way to do that was to educate the community. As our county manager said, we have an ordinance, but you can't enforce an ordinance that nobody knows about. And so we began reaching out, figuring out where we could, how do we distill this information, this all really smart information that we have, into ways that basic folks can understand. We decided that we would be visible ourselves. We have festivals, we have other community events. We were going to show up and we were going to bring tools to help us get our word out. And then we also realized that while we do have this ordinance and it does have teeth, nobody knows who we are and therefore we can't enforce it. And part of that deals with your organizational structure. And she knows more of the history about that, so I'm going to let her touch on how we became our own department and what that meant for us in these abilities.
So, as in a lot of smaller organizations, GIS in Person County is very highly centralized. We are the GIS department. We're closed today because we're here. We started out life in 1999 in the IT department, and that made a lot of sense. Like, okay, you're great with computers, you must be an IT person. And that has been a wonderful home for the GIS department for a very long time. But I sat down with the director a couple years ago, and I was like, I can't do what y'all do. I can't fix the network. I can't install a firewall. And he said, yeah, none of my guys can make maps. And so we kind of decided we don't belong together anymore. And if you think about GIS, we decide where you vote. We decide who you vote for. We decide what school you go to. We decide what bus picks you up. We decide whether or not your insurance is lower because you're close to that fire hydrant. And so we're inherently political. And to be tucked away in IT in a department that has no public function and no political anything to it was kind of a disservice to GIS. And so throughout about a year and discussions with the county manager, she actually tried to sell me to the tax department, but he wouldn't take us. We decided that GIS needed to be its own department. And so the county's really given us the leverage to kind of just take it and run with it and do what we see the community needs versus what the tax department wants or what planning thinks we should be doing. So that, for me, that is like the seminal moment of, I love the IT guys. They're fantastic. I still take them cookies every so often. But being taken out of IT was huge in us being able to kind of develop this public front.
So like I said, we started to show our face at different community events, and we decided we needed tools and we needed giveaways. But unlike all the people downstairs, local government, we were on a limited budget. So I went to Discount Mugs and clicked on clearance. And that's where we ended up with some of these fun items that we got here. And then we also have Molly the Mailbox. And Molly the Mailbox, on one side, shows how you should have your numbers. And on the other side, how you should not have your numbers. And so we work in the same building with the building inspectors and all these other folks, and he just came over one day and built us this little, it actually is on a stand with wheels, and you'll see us wheeling it down the street to our booth at the festival, and now I think everybody's starting to recognize us with this contraption. So we decided that we would show up. We rented a booth at our festival, which is aptly titled Personality. Yes, don't judge. We went to National Night Out. We went to the senior fair, because all of these things we also realized were, hey, we need to be reaching vulnerable populations first that might call 911 and might in that moment forget their address or where they live. And we need to go ahead and make sure that they've got it posted. And so we also got permission to do giveaways. We started raffling off a reflective sign for people to put up. We started doing games. We started doing respondents. And then we also started working with other agencies that had more teeth, because even though she said we had gained the freedom, like I said earlier, nobody knew who we were. And so we could send you a certified letter, and what are you going to do? Trash. And so we worked with different agencies such as building and inspections, and required them to where you had to have an address to get a building permit. And now, due to, again, a 911 incident, you got to have that posted during construction. We worked with first responders, not only EMS, but with each individual fire department. We worked with the Board of Elections. We worked with DSS, the Health Department, and the library doing displays, giving out our flyers on addressing. And we now are working with the Lake Authority. We've got 2 lakes in our county, and by we, I mean I have to address every dock. And so, yeah, thanks for that very recently. So like I said, we started showing up, and here's just a couple of examples. We teamed up, like I said, with emergency services because we work closely with them. We would even take our laptops so where we could check folks' addresses on the spot and make sure that it gets corrected, because the moment we correct it, it updates overnight. And therefore, they're good to go as long as they don't call 911 that night. I mentioned earlier that we worked with agencies that had teeth. So when the elections director came to us and said, hey, I've got a list of 150 folks who are registered in this county and their addresses aren't showing up, we worked with her and then got approval of language from the state board on a letter that we could send out ahead of time to say, hey, your address is wrong, and if you try to go vote, there's going to be an issue. And as a side gig, I've always been a chief judge on election day, and trust me, I would much prefer a voter that comes in, everything's good, and they walk out the door versus one that comes to the help desk, and then we hem and haw back and forth about whether or not they're going to be able to vote over their address. And so we got that letter out, so now we have that language. And of course, everybody knows 911 and emergency services, so we put our language on his letterhead. When we have to tell somebody, especially these good country folk, that, hey, your address is wrong and you got to change it on everything that you've been using, from your license to every bill you have and so on. We knew that we couldn't do that, and so we enlisted their help. So aside from addressing, we realized that we could be useful to a lot of other folks in the county, and there was a lot of projects that possibly could involve us, but they didn't even know that we were here, and so they didn't know the tools that we had that they could use. And so not only did we help them, but we grew awareness of us and what we do and how folks can get up with us. One of the first examples that we have is our cemeteries app, and I'm pretty proud of this because we kind of took it from literally a guy who goes out and surveys cemeteries, brought his stack of note cards, color-coded, highlighted, meaning different things, into the office, and we created this interactive web map so that folks can go in, add information, and try to maintain the history that Person County has. We have revolutionary cemeteries, Civil War cemeteries, Native American, African American slave cemeteries, and so on. And oftentimes these are lost to development, logging, etc. And so by preserving these things and getting them on the map and then getting them in the deeds, we make sure that that part of our history is preserved while also making room for development. And we're going to try to link. Cannot open specified file. Never mind. So you can get to that from our basic website and you can see how that works. And so basically, let's say you have a farm, you know there's a cemetery back in the woods at the edge of the fields, you can go in and put that in, and then we validate that with the Historical Society, and it's there for the future. Another project we've been working on with tourism folks and the Parks and Rec folks is creating a bike route map for Person County. Now, this one is not interactive in the sense that you can put stuff on, but we do have folks that send us these routes. We create them on our site, and it gives people, what we're trying to do is lure that cycling community from Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, an hour north to the snow capital of the Piedmont, to ride their bikes on our beautiful roads. And so, therefore, we created this website that has bike routes on it. You can query by distance. You can get a cue sheet. You can query by where you want to start. And then we also put National Historic Register of Historic Places on there, community stores, restaurants, the brewery that we have, museums, etc. So not only are you going to come to Person County, you're hopefully going to spend some money there too. Similarly, we also worked with each individual fire department to create the bad address submission form, because those are the ones who ride around the county most frequently, and those are the ones who see the issues firsthand. And so part of what you see, I think you see the, I don't want to call it a circle chart, pie chart. It was kind of a psychological warfare thing, like, which can we get you to compete against each other to reduce the bad addresses in your district? Like, nobody wants to be worst, right? And so she was smart enough to think of that. And then, of course, we created maps for the disc golf program. So we just wanted to take the time to kind of discuss some of the tools that we've utilized in our county, because a lot of what's talked about here is really, really intelligent stuff, but it just doesn't apply to a place our size. And so these are the daily things that we have encountered, some of the issues that we encounter regularly, and how we're just straight up educating people on who we are and what we do, growing our stature and growing awareness of our department in the county. Do you want to have anything else you want to add?
So for me, I guess the takeaway message is, we were given the leverage to kind of have this public face that we're building. But don't reinvent the wheel. Don't say the GIS department is going to build all of these wonderful apps and do all of these wonderful things without finding out what's in your community, what data is out there. You know, that fistful of note cards that Ken brought us, that's data. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Figure out what's going on in your community already and piggyback on that, because everything going on in your community belongs on a map somewhere. It's inherently spatial somehow. And so I'll say it one more time. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just figure out what others are already doing and, go to those meetings if you have the leverage to do so. Go to the National Night Out and hand out flyers to people that really don't want them.
Everybody wants a free pin, though.
Everyone wants a free pen. We have learned that, and meet your community where they are. We got a great freebie here of a Bluetooth speaker. Well, what is the 45% of the population of Person County is over the age of 50? Do they want a Bluetooth speaker? No. They want a letter opener.
Your grandma has these in her drawer in her kitchen.
Those are incredibly popular. We have not bought nearly enough letter. That's like the last 3 we have. And so, the kids will walk by and go, what is that? And then grandma's like, can I have 2? And then as she's opening that letter with that bad address clearly posted on the front, it says, is your address correct? Right there on the letter opener. So, just think about that. Think about who it is you're serving. GIS is inherently biased in that it's digital. Not everybody's got a computer. Not everybody wants a computer. We have a good chunk of our population that don't even have internet at their house. So we have a kiosk in our office. You can come and sit and use GIS in our office, and we're happy to sit with you and help you and show you how to do that, print things off like we did yesterday. Just give your community a good look and figure out what it is they need and how they need it, and meet them where they are instead of forcing them to meet you where you are.
Just one other, is that one? That one's not, whatever. One other thing that we do, and it's not even completely GIS related, but to me it gets folks in the door, and it gets folks seeing who we are and the tools that we have, and we use our plotter. We print their building plans. Now we charge them, but we print their building plans. We print maps of their parcels. We'll do any sort of big printing, because we're the only game in town for that. We realize this is a tool that we have that the community could use, and we've increased probably double-fold over last year how many of these things we do. And in that process, like I said, it gets them aware of us, and it gets them aware of our website, and just it's one more tool that we have. So I guess if there's, yes, sir?
Yeah. I have a question. Could you, you mentioned the ordinance. Could you say a bit more about that and what difference that has made?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have an ordinance, and we have had one for many years that says you're required to post your address, and it describes how. And based off of a recent audit, we've got about 1 in 10 folks in the county in violation of that ordinance. And so that's for our number of households. It's going to be about, 2,600 households. So each one of those, ideally, by ordinance, would receive a certified letter and then a follow-up, and we'd have to drive by and take pictures. We're a staff of 2. That is not happening. So we decided education was the better way to go, and the county manager has agreed and has given us a budget with which to educate staff. But the recent changes to the ordinance, in 2014, we required that anytime you come and get a building permit from us, you're adding a deck, you're redoing your roof, you're building a house, whatever, there has to be a valid address for your front door or you don't get a permit. And that has been instrumental in getting some of these issues that we have, kind of ferreted out. And it's annoying for the citizens sometimes. Sometimes it's something we can do 3 to 5 minutes. Sometimes it's weeks, depending on the severity of the issue. We do try to facilitate, let them go ahead and start building, but it can take us a while to figure out what the issue, what the crux of the issue is. And then most recently, we actually had a guy have a heart attack on a job site, and he was a contractor from out of town, and he was working on a solar farm. And so he knew, well, I came through Roxborough, and I went north on the big road, and then I turned off to the right at the solar farm. Well, there's 3 solar farms that fit that description on that big road to the north of Roxborough. And of course, he calls on his cell phone. It comes in phase 2, so 911 gets the address of the cell phone tower. What good does that do anybody? If that guy had known where he was, perhaps he could have transmitted that information over the phone and gotten better, 911 service. So we're now requiring you to post your address in a permanent manner. Doesn't have to be completely permanent, but in a permanent manner in order to get your first building inspection completed. So if you're building a house and somebody's going to come out and inspect your footings, if your address is not posted on that site, you do not get your inspection. And you have to pay a $60 fee when they come back out. which again is ticking people off, but it's serving the purpose of getting the address right the first time, not having to change it, down the road, and impressing upon people just how important that is, from square one for you to have it posted and correct. And we've actually got one. We have a lot of mobile home dealers in town. We've got one mobile home dealer that called to tell me that he had ordered his first green sign and had put it up on his newest mobile home delivery. And he was so proud of himself that he had done that. So it's working, apparently.
So one other partnership with regard to these, we have rural fire departments, and they don't receive a lot of county funding, and they sell these as fundraisers. And so we recognize that we could be good partners as well. And so we let folks know that if you want one of these, well, where can I get them? That's what they all say. You send them to the fire department, $20, and it helps them out and it helps the citizen out. And so that was another partnership we've created where we were able to break down that barrier of we're technical people who sit in the office versus those who are out on the road every day. So I think we are wrapped up. If you've got any
We have time
questions.
for questions.
It's all right if you don't.
Wow,
Cool.
we did good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering, you said, you have the ability for people to input information as far as the cemetery and whatnot. What does that mean? What do you use, like a web app?
Repeat the questions.
So he was asking about our cemetery's web app. I've stated that was interactive, and he was asking how is it interactive? What do we use to get folks the ability to input information? And we just basically use Esri Web Map.
It's just Zach built it. It's just a deployment of an ArcGIS Online web app, built-in web app builder. And it is, it's built such that you can sit at a computer and submit a change to an address or a cemetery location or enter information about the cemetery. Or if you're out in the field and you find one, you pull it up on your smart device, and then yeah, pretty much. I forget what template it is, but it's one of those base ones that you get off of Web App Builder. And then whatever widget it is, I can't remember what it is, but you locate me or whatever, and then you just fill out the information. And what that does is it enters it into our system in a way that only Zach and I can see. So that way, if someone types nasty words in there, is abusing your app, for example, the public can't see that. So we vet them before we make them public. But so they kind of come to us for review for a couple days first, and then we change the status and it becomes public. It's a great question. Yes? That's a great question. So the question was, how do you explain to your 70-year-old grandma what GIS is? I tell them it's, if I feel like maybe they are computer users, I'll tell them it's Google, but run by the county. That works pretty good. But we also, I'll ask them, well, you use a road map, right? When you go to Charlotte, do you get the road map out? Well, yeah, well, I can get you that map, but it's on the computer. And sometimes that's all they need. Other folks have come in our office. We had one recently, came in, said, where did you get this air map of my house? Like, well, guess what? We've had maps of your house since the 30s, and I know your name and how much you paid for your house and that your neighbor has 3 bathrooms. Sometimes it just depends on the level of you got to meet them where they're at. If you feel like they want to talk, absolutely. Tell them about there's layers. You can change the colors, and you can turn the fire hydrants on. You can turn the fire hydrants off. But don't use the acronyms. Don't use the terms. Ask them. We quite often have a map display up behind us and say, "Can you find your house?" And that's a great way to talk about that. Well, because you're using the roads, maybe the township names, maybe the schools. All of that's geographic information, and it really leads to usually a pretty good discussion of what is it we do.
Once we mentioned that we do the addressing function, well, FedEx can't find my house. Now, unfortunately, the light bulb will come on, and that's where I'll lead off with the whole 911 thing. And we'll either have a laptop there where we can check on our website whether or not the address is there and it's accurate. But we also sometimes have a printed out paper map, and you'll see them, standing there pointing and seeing if there's this green or red or black or whatever color we have for not good. And so we try to fix it that way. Again, just making it interactive, making it tangible to where they know that the results are real, and they would rather fix it now versus wait down the line and have to call 911 and then have an issue then. And so it's almost, I hate to put it this way, it's like, I guess when I say it, it seems like we're scaring them in a way, but that's not the point. The point is just to show them how real it is. And so that's how we explain to a lot of these folks who might not have computers or even internet or whatever the importance of what we do. Yes, ma'am.
What do you do for people who don't want to change their address or who refuse to change their address?
Person who makes more than me will answer that question.
So it depends on the situation. Some address changes require board votes, whether or not there's a new road involved or not. Typically, if they complain loudly enough, the board will fail to approve the renaming, and then it's kind of a moot point. We have had pretty good success with sending out certified mail and sending it out and calling and sitting down with people, knocking on their doors, bringing them in the office to talk. And if talking to us is not sufficient, we have a very young, very bright, and very well-known 911 manager who will dress up in his fancy outfit with his shiny shoes and mansplain them what the deal is, and that usually works.
Okay, we're out of time. Look for Sally and Zach during the conference for more conversation.